Hello, my name is Jesus Valdez, and I did my leader media assignment on a book called Carnivore Leadership by Ramon Colon Lopez. So the book I read, again, was by retired Chief Master Sergeant Ramon Colon Lopez, and his book on carnivore leadership describes how he came from a poor neighborhood in Puerto Rico, and how he lived his life very actionable, and how he went to the military as a pararescue or a PJ troop. That special is a spec ops group that specializes on saving military members in harm's way across enemy lines in very dangerous areas, into becoming the senior enlisted advisor to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This book, just call him Colon Lopez, goes into what it means to be a carnivore leader and a herbivore leader. And he describes a carnivore leader as someone that is not afraid to act. Now, not someone that's crazed or just flies off the handle, but when action is needed, they are not afraid to arise to the occasion, make those actions, take responsibility for the outcome, whether good or bad, and be able to serve his people accordingly. Whereas a herbivore leader is someone that is afraid to act and afraid to lead, doesn't take those actions. And I think many of us have seen those type of leaders. They just don't create that much trust. So in this book, he uses what he calls his silver bullets. So there's 20 different silver bullets that outline different types of leadership. Some of the things that we talked about in this course, whether it be your influence as a leader, your time management, or other different ways that we can lead a vision into action. So I took a few of those silver bullets and kind of outlined them, but in the way of this project, and we have the time we have, some of the key things he did talk about is how he influenced people. And one of the biggest things that he said that he did as a leader was to perform duties that he had other people do. So a lot of times you hear people say, don't do things, or don't tell people to do things that you won't do yourself. And he outlines a time while he was the commandant of a schoolhouse. Some of the troops weren't able to complete one of the tasks to become a pararescue or a PJ, and he did not only told them how to do the task, but completed it for them. And what he says is, when you do these type of things, you show that you have the ability to do these things. You build a credibility, and something that we learned in the influence framework of our course. The other thing he did talk about is making sure that when you make a promise, that you keep those promises. And as he was the senior enlisted advisor, he talks about that he would just take on lots of different tasks. But the problem was he had so much that he couldn't keep it under control, and he would fail people. And when you do that, you lose that influence because you're no longer trustworthy. That authority that they can trust is broken. So one of the things he talked about doing is delegating. And again, very important thing as leaders that we should learn on, something that we talked about in this course. And then he talked about how we prioritize our time. Now, funny enough, he did say that he believes that time management is a waste because time waits for no one, but we need to manage our priorities and manage the actions we do. And he goes into in depth of how we waste time as leaders, and we're chatting and doing coffee breaks when we should figure out what we need. And when we do have that free time, use it wisely, whether it's working with our people, having those conversations, or maybe just some creative thoughts so we can get our organization up and running. And then finally, kind of wraps it up into, yes, we need to influence, and yes, we need to prioritize our actions, but for what cause? And that cause is to take our vision and to turn it into action. And he talks about the only way we can do that is, yes, we got to be better for our people. And yes, we need to manage that. But for many people, that's hard. For someone like myself, I have a hard time managing time and my priorities. And sometimes I get lost in that. But having the courage to say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I need to change. And then making those actions. As I go through and I kind of reflect, how we can apply these things to, I think of a time that I was a young airman and we had someone that was over us, and he was a civilian. He's more over the task of the office, not our supervisor. But he would talk very badly to us, mistreat us, and do things that were not what was supposed to happen. And one of my leaders my staff sergeant just said nothing, and he kind of was like, that's just the way he is, and I'm not very confrontational. And I can see how not having the courage to manage that broke the influence that us younger airmen had towards that individual, and we were not able to really catch that vision. So I can see how something like that can apply. As I think for myself, and some of the reflection, I think a huge part for me is delegation. I feel that I do overtask myself, and I've gotten to the point where I've been very stressed, and I'm not taking care of those things that I need to take care of. So I think that action management is something that I really need to work on. Not to say I'm some hard charger at work, or I'm someone special, but that's something I need to work on. Now, I would recommend this book. I will say, though, this is very guided towards military members, so you're going to get a lot of that military feel, and the stories are military. That being said, some of those actions and some of those things he does talk about, I think, do relate to the civilian world as far as being actionable, taking a stand at work, and organizing yourself. One thing I will say about this book that I guess you could say is a negative is that it is very short chapters. They do not get in depth. And I feel like we could have gotten a little bit more from this leader of how he did those things versus the small little snippets and little stories that he gave us. But overall, I think it's a great book, and I think you would enjoy it.